Welcome back to the Tiger Solar Power Podcast. Today, we're diving into the biggest solar and battery stories from the past few weeks. And honestly, this has been one of the most eventful months we've seen in South Australia's energy space for a long time. We've got new battery trends, new solar data, updated incentives, major grid news, industry insights, and a few surprising facts that most homeowners haven't heard yet. Whether you're already solar-powered or you're just curious about what's happening next in Australia's energy world, today's rundown is loaded with value. So settle in, because there's a lot to unpack. Let's start with the headline that's probably affecting real homeowners the most: the surge in South Australian battery installations. Over the last 3 weeks, installers across the state have been reporting some of their busiest months of the year, and a massive amount of that demand is being driven by the weather. Every summer now feels hotter, longer, and more unpredictable. And when the heat ramps up, so do outages. Just last week, one of the network operators mentioned that they're preparing for multiple high-risk days this summer. That kind of language gets people moving. The interesting thing this year is that the demand increase isn't coming from early adopters or tech lovers. It's coming from everyday families who are simply tired of big bills, tired of bill shock, and tired of relying on a grid that sometimes can't keep up. Most homes adding batteries are going for 10 to 13 kilowatt-hour units, and the latest numbers show those homes are cutting their grid usage by up to 75%. Imagine only paying for 1/4 of the power you used to. Some homes are reporting even more dramatic reductions, especially those who shift their major appliance use to daytime hours to better use that solar. What's even more interesting is that more South Australians are learning how to optimize their systems. They're staggering appliance use, using timers and tuning their battery settings to capture cheaper off-peak power when needed. 3 years ago, almost no one cared about this stuff. Now people are getting energy notifications on their phone saying things like, "Charge your battery now, prices are low," and they're actually doing it. It shows a real shift. People want control, and they want predictable costs. Now, speaking of value, nationally, we saw one of the biggest stories of the month. High-quality solar panels have finally dipped in price for the first time in quite a while. This is huge. The premium end of the market, the brands that actually last decades in Australian heat, has become more affordable because supply chains are less stressed, shipping costs have dropped, and manufacturers have prioritized Australia as a key market. And honestly, they should. Australia now has over 3.7 million rooftop solar systems, and on a per capita basis, we're still the #1 rooftop solar country on Earth. One of the fun facts that came out of a recent report is that on average, 1 in every 3 freestanding Australian homes now has solar. In South Australia, that number is even higher, around 1 in 3 and climbing. The report also said that if adoption continues at this pace, nearly half of Australia's electricity could come from rooftop solar alone by 2030. That's not a distant dream. That's 6 years away. And with battery adoption rising alongside it, we're not just generating a huge amount of power, we're storing it too. Now let's talk about grid stability, because this is where South Australia continues to stand out globally. Over the past few weeks, we broke another minimum demand record. This is when so much solar is being generated during the day that the grid's demand drops to incredibly low levels. At one point, South Australia was basically being powered almost entirely by rooftop solar. That's insane when you think about it. Rooftop solar used to be considered a bonus or extra. Now it's practically the backbone of our daytime electricity. But here's where it gets interesting from a homeowner's perspective. When minimum demand drops too low, the grid becomes harder to manage. To keep the system stable, the grid needs batteries, both the giant ones, like the Hornsdale Power Reserve, and thousands of small ones in homes around the state. And because home batteries can react in milliseconds, they're actually becoming part of the solution for stabilizing the grid. There's a good chance that in the next couple of years, many South Australian battery owners will earn money simply by allowing their system to participate in grid balancing events. It's passive income without lifting a finger. Now let's shift gears to battery technology, because the past month brought some big breakthroughs. Several major manufacturers released updated cycle life data, and LFP batteries, which are the most common in Australia, are now being rated at over 10,000 cycles. For anyone not fluent in battery talk, here's what that means. If you fully charge and discharge your battery every single day, that's 27 years of usage. And most homes don't cycle their battery fully every day. So realistically, we're talking about batteries that could last 20, 25, even 30 years, depending on usage. Another major story from this month is the push for Australian households to become peak-proof. Energy companies and grid operators have been very upfront. Evening demand is going to be a challenge, especially on hot summer nights. Solar alone can't help you at 7 p.m., but solar plus battery absolutely can. More and more South Australians are realizing that a battery doesn't just save money, it gives peace of mind. It's your own personal safety net. During an outage, your fridge stays on, your Wi-Fi stays on, your lights stay on. Your life doesn't pause because the grid couldn't handle the heat. Now here's where we start adding the extra depth. A story that didn't get as much mainstream attention, but is incredibly important, is the discussion around solar export limits. More suburbs across SA are hitting technical limits on how much power can be pushed back into the grid during sunny periods. This doesn't mean solar is bad. It actually means there's so much rooftop solar that the infrastructure is struggling to keep up. Some homeowners have been frustrated to find their exports capped unexpectedly. But here's the good news. Batteries almost completely solve this problem. When you store your solar instead of exporting it, you avoid limits, you avoid wasting generation, and you shift that energy into the most valuable part of the day, the evening peak. Some experts are predicting that within a few years, batteries will be considered almost essential in high-density solar suburbs simply because they help manage local voltage and stabilize neighborhood power quality. Another important story comes from the commercial sector. A growing number of small and medium South Australian businesses are now adding solar plus battery systems to stabilize their operations. Think of places like small grocery stores, cafes, bakeries, workshops, businesses where a sudden outage can mean lost stock or lost income. Over the past few weeks, several SA businesses have reported that their battery systems kicked in during brief grid drops, and they didn't even notice until they checked the monitoring app. One cafe owner said their battery saved them from throwing out hundreds of dollars worth of refrigerated goods during a 2-hour outage. And what's even more interesting is that businesses are now starting to join virtual power plants too, meaning their energy assets are becoming income tools as well. Here's another story that's emerging quietly, but gaining momentum. EV charging, powered by home solar and batteries. With more electric vehicles hitting Australian roads, people are realizing that charging from the grid at night can be expensive, but charging from your own stored solar energy is incredibly cheap. Over the past 3 weeks, several reports have highlighted that homes with solar, battery storage, and EVs can bring their total fuel cost down to a fraction of what petrol drivers pay. One estimate suggested that EV owners with solar and a battery can effectively fill the tank for the equivalent of 20 to 40 cents. That's a massive shift in household budgeting. Finally, the behavioral trend that really stood out this month, and this was reinforced by 3 separate surveys, is that Australians are shifting away from the mindset of solar is a money-saving upgrade towards solar and batteries are essential household infrastructure. People are thinking long-term. They're planning for uncertainty. They want autonomy, stability, and resilience. Solar and batteries aren't being seen as luxury add-ons anymore. They're seen as the modern version of insulation, or air conditioning, or reliable internet. They're becoming standard. So that wraps up today's expanded energy update. It's been a huge month for solar and batteries. Lower prices, higher demand, new records, better technology, smarter incentives, and public sentiment shifting more than ever toward energy independence. If you're in South Australia and you're thinking about solar or adding a battery, now is absolutely one of the strongest times to explore your options, especially with new rebates and better tech hitting the market almost every week. Thanks for tuning in to the Tiger Solar Power Podcast. Stay safe, stay cool, and stay powered, and we'll see you in the next episode.